Are we ready? Woo, that's loud. Okay. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing John from Shocklogic, and really exciting topic. He's going to talk to you about bulletproofing your event and keeping attendees safe. So, without further ado, welcome to the stage, John.
Hello, hello. So a few familiar faces. How are you this afternoon? I hope that I don't, I'm going to keep you awake, really awake. So I'm going to be looking at each one of you like this, all right? So, so we're going to be talking today about security and how to keep our attendees safe and what can we do. This is me. I'm the CEO of a company called Shocklogic. We provide event management software. What a coincidence, right? We're here. And on top of it all, we have customers all over the world and a very varied customer base, a bit like our team. It's like United Nations there. I'm a meeting planner by trade. I'm a quantum physicist by education, so I'm a geek. I'm normally the geekiest person in the room, although here it's gonna be tough. But I have a PhD on quantum physics, which, yeah, puts me out there, you know, geek level. And I come from a time where I started with computing, where computers had names. But I started as a PCO. A PCO is a professional conference organizer. So event planning, event management runs on my DNA. I can't help it. It's the way I look at the world. But I'm a technology person. So the mix of the two things is what puts me here today. I have a lovely team. I am literally in love with my team, with each one of them in a particular way. And like with the people we love, somebody you want to strangle them. And sometimes, you know, I can't do enough. To see them grow and flourish and bloom. And it's an absolute delicious journey. This is some of our customers, so we support a lot of associations and societies with our scientific medical events, NGOs, non-for-profits, etc., etc. And we also have a number of corporate clients, like Bloomberg and some big names. So that sort of creates a mix of the kind of customers that we see and the kind of experiences that we have done. So I've been doing this for about 30-something years. I know I look very, very young. I'm like, you know, in your group. But, you know, creams and surgery, they all work in my favor. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about security and how to keep our attendees safe. So safety versus security, what is it? So safety is one thing, and security is a different thing. And so we want to, there are certain things that we can do in order to make, and I'm going to specifically be on the role of the event organizer, right? Because there's so much right now in the world that we live today, there's so much that's going on. So I will not talk about what to do against terrorism or all this kind of stuff that's going on. So we say that safety is equals to awareness plus preparation. So being clear what it is and then taking the actions that are necessary for us to be able to execute. Then, and we realize that, you know, more and more we're spending more in security and safety. And also organizers have been able to do more and more. I mean, now we have a person at the door with a back check. That kind of stuff wouldn't have happened before. And then those of us that capture data have to put in place certain measurements. We have to make certain decisions and certain investments in order for us to be able to capture that data in a safe way, safe for everybody. When we polled, about 67% of organizers express their concerns about it. And about 8 in 10 event planners in 2016 when we did the polls, but only 40% of them were actually doing something about it. So a lot of this happens to all of us. We identify a situation, but we only take action in certain points. Now, when our actions affect a whole bunch of people, then we have to put the checks in place. So we talked, and we have been working with a number of companies out there that are not only making the decision, but are making the investments also in order to put that sort of security in place. Who knows what GDPR is? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. So it's enough of you that don't know for me to have to say it. So it's the General Data Protection Regulation that is coming on. And it's coming from the 25th of May onwards is a rule. And it's a set of guidelines on how we're allowed to capture, exchange, store, and distribute data. So this is really important. This is as important as many of us did not understand when 9/11 happened that the world was going to change in the way that it changed. Immediately, you know, small things like we can only bring 100 milliliter shampoo or container into it. I mean, airport checks before 9/11 when what we experienced there. You're a bit young, but those of us that were alive and kicking doing before 9/11 know that the world changed from that point. So GDPR is going to change the world also, because we're only going to be able to exchange data under a certain set of conditions. So we see, so if we concentrate on the bit of data gathering, how are we getting the data, and how does that journey looks like? So we can break an event into the pre-event stage, the on-site, which is here right now, and then the post-event, which is a follow-up. So for this event, you register, you were invited, there's a lot of things that you did. You checked the program, who do you want to listen to, et cetera, et cetera. The organizers had to do a lot of work before. So there's an intense amount of work that happens here, and there's an experience that you guys have here, and then is afterwards. So maybe contacts or content or something that made sense that you want to follow up and you want to get in contact, you want to keep connected to, and people that you met that you want to continue the communication. For the exhibitors, hopefully it's you, and for you guys is hopefully each other and the exhibitors. So this is the journey that we can describe for an event. So as we are collecting data, and the measurements and the decisions that we have to make on that pre-event, that on-site, and that post, if I can give you some examples, it is a pre-event, you had to enter your information on a website, on the EventTech Live website, and that was done under a certain set of conditions and security in the background, so your data is safe. And then there will be certain events where also payments have to happen. And for payments, this is pretty clear. This is pretty much regulated. There's something called PCI, which is the Payment Card Initiative, and DSS. So you have to be compliant with these two things in order to accept online payments, which means that these are done by the bank. But you know, you're in Amazon, and then suddenly you land in another page where you have to put your credit card in that particular space. So there's a certain set of security setup and regulations that needed to be put in place for that to be able to happen. So this is amazing, because now we can do commerce, and less we have to be worried about fraud. And still, many of us get, you know, into trouble, or we face the wrong conditions, but we are very, very careful. We had a customer that would say, no, we don't want online payments. We want everyone to fill the form by hand and email it to us. And we want the credit card to be written because I'm afraid of online payments. And I was thinking, that's mad, right? So they felt safer for people to write the credit card on a piece of paper, scan it or whatever. I was going to say fax, but I'll lose you guys if I say fax, right? So, and then scan it or take a photo and then send it, than going online, because, you know, I have to keep myself protected for. So perception It's a lot to do with this. And then in the process, so you have to, for some events you will have to pay, some not, and then you arrive here, and then you print your badge, right? So the question is, what is inside of that thing, right? Is just a number, like the QR, like the barcode, or there's more data in that thing? And how are we going to exchange this in the future? When you go to a stand, I touch this thing against a stand, what information is transferred? What is in that little NFC reader that will read this chip that's behind this? What is the information that's going to be there? But many of the things we don't even ask ourselves, right? Because I got my Oyster card, I touch, it opens, I go. One day I touch, ooh, need help, not enough money, I go to the machine, put money, I come back, it opens, I go. So we take many of these things for granted as we're living, and then GDPR, PCI, DSS, what we're trying to do is trying to create the structures behind that. In the future, you're going to hear a word that maybe one person here is familiar with, and I would like to see, how many of you have heard or know what blockchain is? All right, I expected that, okay. So in the future, blockchain, and remember that word, because it's like internet, okay? So those of us in the 2000s, we were alive in those times. You know, we dealt with the first time. We can almost go back to the first time we heard the word internet, and what it meant, and what we didn't know. All right. Like a friend of mine says, I still don't know what HTTPS means or HTTP/, right? And nobody cares. So let's define what to do and what not to do. And this presentation is designed for organizers, not just for attendees, for event organizers. And I'm expecting that the young crowd is here because you are learning about events and you want to become an event organizer of some sort. So one of the things that we say is simplify. And simplify is amazing in every single aspect of life. You know, and if you can apply this word in everything you do, in an email that you send, in an image that you design, in the way that we carry our communication, simplify. And then to identify the ways on how we exchange data on site. So on site, we have this. Also, we have, there was a gentleman with a reader at the door. So he's scanning, the moment that you go out and you come back in with your badge, he will scan your back to know how many people came in and out. So what he's reading, he's just reading a number, which is in this barcode here. So really, there's not a lot of data being exchanged there. It's just captured. So that is a barcode, and that's a QR code. So the barcode is just a number that without the database that identifies who that number is, it means nothing. But the QR code, you can store 3,942 characters on a QR code. So I can put my whole information. It's a little bit like, have you ever seen what happens when you swipe a credit card and you have like a word or something and you swipe? You get a lot of information. You get the credit card number, you get the expiry date, you get a lot of, the only thing that's not there is what is printed in the back of your card. And that's why, to verify that you're holding the card in your hand, they say, oh, can you give me your CVV number? And it has a number of other names. But that is kind of the security check. So you got two things to do, access tracking or access control. Right now, we're doing access tracking. Access control is that if there were sessions here that were paid for, and when you scan it, you're not allowed in. That's access control. Or you are at a party and you scan the ticket and say, sorry, somebody already is inside with that ticket. That's access control, right? And then we have NFC or RFID, which is the technology behind this little chip, which is a technology in your Oyster cards and now in contactless payments is RFID and NFC. Some of this can be bigger, so it could be detected with an antenna, and some of it can be smaller, which is called, there's one called vicinity and the other one's called proximity. And as you approach the card, like at a millimeter, it already read it. There's another way to exchange data and to capture data with something called iBeacons, and there will be a number of companies here that you can go and check with them what it does. And iBeacons work in a way that there would be little readers all over this venue, and then you take the app of this event, you turn on your Bluetooth, and then those beacons will know where you are and will be able to send you information relevant to that. So the organizer will be able to capture information. There's a company here called Whitation, which you should go and visit if you're an event organizer. They do an amazing thing where they put a little chip, a little device on your badge, and then they track. So you don't need a mobile phone in order to do that. Also, there's a solution called Looped from eTouches that also works the same way. Really, two really good things. They're not cheap, but if the budget is there, they're very interesting. So this is what the beacons do. So as you move around, they recognize where you've been. And then you can produce heat maps that will produce. But all of that data, if we're talking about security, what's happening with that information? You know, we are broadcasting this thing. So this is another way. So for example, I've seen many clubs now. And for example, the boys have to go through a different queue, and the boys will be checked, and their picture will be taken immediately. And there will be people that if they misbehave the previous time, they will not be allowed the next time. Girls see it a little bit less, but and then other ways to collect data. You could have a mat, and you have an RFID tag like this, and as soon as you step, that creates a magnetic field that actually reads the tag and knows you're in. So that's another way. So, so what I'm trying to share with you is that the different ways how we capture data and how security is involved in all this and how it affects us in what happens. So, so what do we do? So one of the things to do is, my suggestion is engage a professional, because there are people that actually know about this much more than what we do. But there's certain things that we can do ourselves in order to keep us safe up to a certain point. And, you know, have a strategy. Have a strategy on how data is managed within your organization, within your event, within that, the activity that you're taking. You know, strategies are amazing. Strategy is amazing because it provides us with an energy, an intention to do something. It defines the path of where we're going. And I tend to recall Alice in Wonderland when she gets to the crossroads and she asks the rabbit, Mr. Rabbit, what way should I take? And the rabbit says, where are you going? She says, I don't know. She said, so any way that you take is the same. So actually without a strategy, without defining where we go, without an objective, we really don't have direction. So strategies are great because are going to be able to, we tend to see strategy as a corporate thing, and I know that some of my friends and some of my colleagues and students tend to see it that way, yet each one of us should have a strategy. So it's one of my recommendations. The other one is execute what we call the 5 whys. What, who, when, where, and why. And as you write them down and as you try to identify and answer these questions, so who am I receiving data? Who am I giving data? Who am I exchanging data? Where am I doing this? How, what is happening? But the most important thing is to start with why. And once you have a strategy and you answer the why, the same way that you can be sitting on a boat, right? And you can have the sails in the right direction. You won't move if there's no wind, if there's no engine, if there's nothing to push you along. Why does that? Why creates a particular energy within us that it gives us that drive? It is where we're coming from to do this thing. And, you know, and within my team, I tend to say, start with why in everything that we do. We're so trained to answer what, if I ask you, what do you do? It's what do you do, right? So most of you would tell me, oh, I work for, or I do this. if we listen to inspirational leaders or organizations, leading organizations that are very successful, like Apple, and I'm not an Apple fan, I can tell you. Yet, what I hear every time I come in contact with Apple is the why. It's not so much what they do, but it's in the products, at the shop, at the store, in the things, in the communications. I tend to hear the why constantly. And it comes from a different place. It doesn't come from the frontal lobe, you see. What happens is that we have very particular brains. We are all creatures. And we have a reptile brain that grew stuff around it and made us, then we can process stuff. So the frontal lobe says one thing, that does what, it does how, etc., etc. But the limbic brain, or reptilian brain, only works in emotions. So answering why first will put you in the right track. And then one of my recommendations is, if you're doing something online, although you don't have to know what it is, make sure that the S at the end of HTTP is there. Because what that means is that it means that information that's going through is encrypted. There is a little program on the other side, on each side, saying to each other how to unencrypt the information that went through. So whatever is caught, it is harder, not impossible, just harder to be able to be used for the wrong reasons. Then what we tend to say when events are very security prone and intensive, we tend to say to them, do real-time verification. Similar to the picture that we saw with, at the club. So when you read, you see a photo, I know that that person is that. So as I come through and I go to the machine and I put my information, how do they know it's really me? And we've seen the kind of stuff that's happening, and I hate, I'm really not for scaremongering, but I can't deny what happened in Manchester. You know, it happened. So whatever we can put in place in order to make those checks and those corrections, the better we end up. And the chain is as strong as its weakest link. So what will happen a lot is that people that work on profiting or creating advantages from the weaker areas are going to look for the weakest link on the chain. So we should, how to identify where's the weakest link would be immediately a question. It is, that's why I was talking about at the beginning, talk to a specialist, okay? Let's make sure you involve somebody that knows more than us about these things. Who knows who Pareto, if I say Pareto's law, can I see a show of hands who Pareto is? Pareto was quite an amazing guy. Pareto was an economist, an Italian economist, from medieval times, and he actually lived in Switzerland, and he was the first international consultant, international economic consultant. So this guy would be asked to organize the regions when Italy was the belly button of the world, when commerce, beauty, art, everything was coming out of Italy, and Florence in particular. So Pareto, after studying a lot, he realized that 80% of the results invariably were produced by 20% of the efforts, and vice versa. So the seeking for that 20%, what is my 20%? How do I apply Pareto's law in my life? How do I apply Pareto's law in everything that I do? Because nowadays, covering 100% is going to be tough. So if you concentrate on the 20% that will produce 80% of the results, then it's a lot easier to get to 90-something. But identifying, so if there's anything that you walk away today with, is that key, is to be able to look for and identify that 20%. And what is the 20% that provides you with 80% of the results? And a lot of corporations and companies, organizations should be doing this constantly. So this is pretty much, we're pretty much at the end. You didn't have to give me the warning. So anything else that you guys want to hear about? Because if it is related to technology and events, not just security, I can answer pretty much everything. Thank you very much. Cheers.